I'm Ken Snyder. I'm the executive director of the Shingo Institute. That is the home of the Shingo Prize. So if you've heard of the Shingo Prize, that's us. I have been in this role for 10 years now. I have been involved with Shingo for 16 years. I was in 2009, became an examiner and joined the board of the Shingo Institute and was lucky enough to be able to become the executive director in 2015. We I really enjoy the work I'm doing. I had the chance early in life to go live in Japan and went back later and worked for a Japanese company. Learned a lot about Kaizen as a result of that, and I've tried to be a student of it. And I'll be honest with you, it over the course of my career, I found it very hard to learn because there was a lot and a lot and a lot of trial and error. Well, I should say a lot of trials and a lot of errors, and hopefully a little bit of learning from those errors. But we didn't have I couldn't find a good way to learn this other than just trying things and then figuring out that wasn't the best way to do stuff. And so one of the things that I have dedicated our efforts to at the Shingo Institute is to help make it easier for people to learn how to do this and how to do it the right way. And so I'm going to talk about a little bit what is this, which when we talk about it, and the Japanese term has commonly been Kaizen. How do we do improvement and how do we make it easier for people to uh, do improvement? I'm going to share my slide deck now and I'll go into that a little bit more. Can everybody see that? Yep. Okay. So we've redefined the purpose. When I started the Shingo Institute, we redefined the purpose and the mission. And I think the one thing I've highlighted here is the key to it all, and that is to improve the process of improvement. We want to make it easy for all of you to do improvements within your own organizations. A little bit of history. I know some of you know this, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but I do want to make sure that we have proper context. We're named after Shigeo Shingo. He was a Japanese industrial engineer and consultant. He spent almost his entire working career as a consultant, working for his own consultancy, but prior to that, working for what's called JMA, the Japan Management Association. He worked with dozens and dozens of companies throughout Japan, but perhaps most importantly or most relevant, he worked with Toyota. He started working with Toyota as a consultant in 1955, and he continued working with them until 1982. He taught a week-long quarterly course that was part of the regular progression for management in Toyota. So he, over the course of those 27 years, it's estimated he taught over 3,000 Toyota executives. So he knew a lot of the top people throughout Toyota, whoever went as Toyota grew and expanded, and as a result, many of them are familiar with him. He wrote one of the books about the Toyota production system called A Study of the Toyota Production System from an Industrial Engineering Viewpoint. We just refer to it generally as the Green Book. He wrote 6 other books that have been translated into English besides the Green Book. He wrote 17 total books, of which those 7 have been translated into English. He is the person who invented a lot of terms that we use in our improvement world. Things like poka-yoke is a Shingoism. The SMED, or single minute exchange of die or quick changeover, is a Shingoism. The concept of one-piece flow is a Shingoism. A lot of things that we refer to come directly from Shingo and his writings. And we at Utah State University, where the Shingo Institute and the Shingo Prize have their home, used to run what was the leading operational excellence conference. And in 1988, we had the opportunity to have him come speak at our conference. And at that time, awarded him an honorary doctorate, which you can see a picture of right here. And at that time, asked for his permission to start the Shingo Prize, name the prize in his honor. And he granted us permission to do that. So we have been running the Shingo Prize with his okay for 37 years now. So since that 37 years, here are some highlights. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. We were blessed for a period of about 10 years to have his son be actively engaged with the Shingo Institute, and he became his name Ditso Shingo, and Ditso became a dear friend of mine. We spent a few weeks every year together running steady tours. He'd join us, and he'd also spend another week together during Shingo conferences and so on. So I spent a lot of time with him over those 10 years. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. We miss him, but he added a lot of perspective into his father's teachings and helped us a lot in ways to get better. Just to put some perspective on the growth of the prize and the impact that it's had. We have over 300 recipients now in 37 years. We have the recipients are in over 30 different countries. And we have workshops in any given year in 15 to 20 of those countries. And so we have become what I consider the worldwide or global standard of excellence. There's a lot of country-related prizes, like Deming Prize in Japan and Baldrige Award in the US, but there's nobody else that has the footprint that we have throughout the world, and it has become a true global prize. But not everything has been great. One of the things that still bothers us, even though we've gotten much better at teaching how to avoid this, but over the course of the years, we've seen a lot of organizations who improve and get a Shingo Prize, but then soon afterwards, things turn around and they can't maintain their improvement. And that's one of the things that you don't want to see in a world of continuous improvement, is people not being able to continue. And so we were very disturbed by this trend. We're still disturbed by it, but we've fixed it a bit, and we have some more fixing to do, I think. But we were able to about after 15 years of running the prize, in about 2004, launched a research program trying to figure out what it is why do a few keep getting better and better over the years, and why do so many turn for the worse after they receive a Shingo Prize. And we knew this was our old model of how we did evaluations. You had good lean systems, you had good lean tools, and you got good results, then yes, you could get a Shingo Prize. And we knew something was missing. And we talked to most of the organizations that had declined, the ones over here, but we also talked and spent a lot of time with the few that had kept getting better and better. And what was it that was different about them? And we took a deep dive into those organizations to understand better what they're doing. And we came up with a couple of different insights. One insight is that they talked about behaviors. And I'll give an example. One of the organizations said, well, we don't measure accidents at work or time lost to accidents, or people having to go to the hospital or things like that, because what we found is it's better to prevent accidents. In order to prevent accidents, we've got to be doing the things that prevent those accidents. And so we measure things like safety catches, and we recognize people for finding a safety problem and reporting it. We also measure how long does it take for us to act on a report once it's initiated. Do we do it right then? Do we take a couple of days? Do we do it within a week? And we measure the time it takes for us to take action to make sure that preventive action is put in place so that nobody ever can get hurt on the job. And when we measure that, it matters to people when we measure it. And so we measure what matters, we measure those behaviors, and as what the results are come from those behaviors, and we don't have to worry about the results. So we took that kind of a report from those organizations and put it into an insight to us, an aha moment. Ideal results require ideal behaviors. And the only way you're going to get ideal results over time is if you've got the right behaviors. The second thing we noticed is that they used the purpose, they had a well-defined purpose. And the well-defined purpose was something that the people in the organizations understood. And when we talked to people in the organization, they could tell us, oh, we come to work because, and we love working here because, and then they would fill in that purpose. And people would have their own ways of explaining it, but it was pretty consistent and pretty universal that everybody knew what the purpose was. And people not only knew it, but they believed in it and it motivated them. It was something that was a cause, if you will. And as a result of that, we said purpose drives behavior. But then we saw some examples, particularly in organizations that were not able to maintain their improvement efforts, where they maybe had a clearly defined purpose, but people would say things to us like, yeah, well, that's the purpose, but sometimes it's really hard to do it. You go, what do you mean? I said, well, let me give you an example. We do this, and that's just the way we do things here. But I don't think that ties to the purpose. And as we talked that got people a little bit soured on the idea of the purpose. Because if the purpose really was motivating to people, then they would, or there was really what the organization was all about, then why did they make it so hard to do the right thing? And so what we found is that to get people engaged initially, you needed to have a clear purpose, and it needed to be something that was motivating and compelling to them. But unless you made it easy for them to do the things that tie to that purpose, then they'd get cynical about it and they would lose their commitment to the purpose. And we tied those together, purpose and systems drive behavior. And in this case, let me make sure I share with you what we mean when we say systems. And I'll focus on, here's a couple of things we know about systems. A bad system beats a good person every time. And so there's some good people who are committed to the purpose who are telling us the company doesn't seem to believe in the purpose because they make it so hard for us to do the right thing. And so a part of that systems drive behavior is a good system has to make it easy to do the right thing and make it hard to do the wrong thing. And a system can ruin the purpose if you don't make it easy to do the right thing. We found that there's a couple of different kinds of systems. I'll just do a quick review of what we think about that. One is the work systems, the work we all do that adds value to our clients that they pay us for. And that can be the product that you make in a manufacturing environment or the service you provide if you're in a hospital or a bank or some other service organizations. Those are the systems that provide the value. But you have some leadership systems, and that's things like strategy. What new product should we develop? How do you decide that? It could be things that are universal across the organization, such as a performance evaluation system or a budgeting system or a Hoshin-Kanri system or something like that. And you have that's a leadership system, the things to run the organization. And there's also improvement systems, and these are things that help make the organization better. And that's things like a training system or a recognition system, a communication system, those things. So when we talk about systems, we're talking about those three different categories, and there's a whole bunch of systems that an organization may have, but all of them need to help tie to that purpose. Otherwise, why does the system exist? The system should be there to make it easy to do the right thing. And we found every good system anyway has a purpose or an aim, that aim is to the purpose. I'm using aim here deliberately because that's a Deming term. A good system always has an owner, somebody who's responsible for making sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. There's a set of tools that are required that make a system run, and if you lack the tools, then it's very likely the system won't function properly. And that you have some clear performance goals you're trying to achieve, but you measure both those performance goals and also the behaviors that the system has people do, so that you can verify that you're doing the right things and getting the kind of outputs that you want, the kind of KPIs that you want. And we use the term KBIs, and KBIs in this case stands for key behavioral indicators. Those are the behaviors that you measure, the safety catches that you get reported, or the safety prevention things you put in place. So those are the behaviors that you might measure in a safety system, for example. Okay, and the five tools that we require, we define them as standard work. Every system needs standard work, not just work itself, but work or standard work for the work, if you will. You need to have a report to make sure that that's how you get the feedback on whether the system's working or not. You need to have a cadence or a schedule of, we do this every time, and we have a way of making sure that you've got things on a certain schedule. And then as you make improvements, you should record those so you don't go back and make the same mistakes again. So those are the things that we found the effective systems have. One more thing that we found in talking to those organizations that keep getting better and better is that they could always explain to us the reasons why they do the things they do. And we started collecting those reasons of why. And we reformulated them into what we call principles, because we kept hearing the themes over and over again. And we developed a set of guiding principles. But let's talk about, what do we mean when we talk about a principle? What we found is, when we went to those organizations, no matter what country or what industry they were in, they were talking about the same things. And so we found that they're universal, that they're the same, those kind of truths that are true everywhere. And we would also, we're going to borrow this from Stephen Covey, but timeless. We suspect that things that are true today were true 1,000 years ago, or and will be true 1,000 years from now. They apply everywhere and always. And you can see the evidence that supports those principles in the way that those organizations kept getting better. So we could see the evidence. We could also see the consequences of when you follow the principle or you don't follow the principle. What are the consequences of following and not following? But most importantly, principles always answer the question why. And especially if you dive deeply into something and like a 5 why, you apply a 5 why tool, you get closer and closer to that core reason as to why you should do something. And we thought, if we could articulate those principles, that would help people a lot in their improvement efforts. And so we made a very strong effort to redo our Shingo model. So if you remember, our old model consisted of systems, tools, and results. We added these guiding principles to the model. And we also introduced this concept of culture. But to us, just to be really clear, culture is all about behaviors. Don't tell us what your values are and point to something on the wall. Show us your values, show us your culture by what you do. And your actions speak much louder than words. We also found it to be useful to organize the guiding principles into some simple dimensions so we could understand what those principles are about primarily. Now, we found that these principles all interact with each other. And if you do one in one dimension, sometimes you have to do this in another dimension before it works right. And I'll give an example of that. But we found it easier for people to understand it if they were classified in different dimensions. And so we have enterprise alignment as one dimension, and that's all about the purpose of the organization and aligning people around it. Continuous improvement is about the process and how do you keep improving the processes within the organization and the systems within the organization. And we have cultural enablers, which is all about the culture and the people. And we had developed 10 principles to articulate those reasons why that we kept collecting. So let me just use it, and you can see them all here. I'm not going to go through all 10 of them, and I think many of you are familiar with this already, but let me just give an example. If you want people to buy into the culture and become engaged, you've got to respect them, but you've also got to give them a purpose for them to be engaged in. So you can't respect every individual, we don't think anyway, you can't respect every individual without having constancy of purpose. And so one might be in one dimension, one might be in a different dimension, but the two are intrinsically linked. You can't separate them out. And that's just a simple example of how the interaction between principles is almost always there in almost every type of situation every challenge you're trying to tackle. So we developed this set of principles. This is something we introduced in 2008, and it's taken off. It's really energized the work of the Institute. We've developed a set of workshops, and we try to do what Masaki Imai has challenged all of us to do, have Kaizen be something that people do every day, and every person gets engaged and they do it in every part of an organization. And when you can do that, you can make your organization better and better over time. We developed a set of workshops to be able to teach the model to people and help them understand it better. And we found that we are unable to support all of the different people around the world that are interested in using the model to drive excellence within their organizations. And as a result, we started partnering with people, different mainly consultancies. There's a couple of exceptions where it's teaching organizations and that don't really provide a lot of consulting, but they tend to be teaching organizations that can do consulting. But at any rate, their clients needed people not only to teach them in a classroom setting such as a workshop, and even if it is an experiential learning, even if that's built into it, they still needed people who were experts in this subject to be able to work with them on an ongoing basis to really help them with their long-term improvement efforts. And so we found it beneficial for us to focus on the research and the teaching materials and let our partners focus on the delivery of the teaching materials and on the consulting that happens. And we have a number of licensed affiliates around the world, and one of our favorite and most cherished partners is SA Partners. And so we have a great relationship with our affiliate partners, because the way we've structured it, our success depends upon their success, and to a large extent, their success depends upon us. And it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And so we cherish the opportunity to work with SA Partners and our other partners around the world. There's a little bit of background, and thank you for letting me do the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing now, and let's talk about things that you want to ask me.
Well, yeah, thanks, Ken. Ron here.
That sounds like John.
Or do we jump in?
I'm working in a client at the moment, so they're very kind to give me time to join. So great summary as usual again. I have a question for you, which again might be going through other people's heads on the call when we talk about all these systems and we talk about creating systems maps, and you mentioned a few there. How do you get, stop people being overwhelmed by this idea that we have to create a system map for everything we do in our organization? How do you calm them down? What?
I think that the simpler we make things, the easier it is for people to understand and do them. So I hesitate to have people complicate things too much. If you're a small organization, you might not need to have a formal system for this and a formal system for that. It's okay to get by with the things that you can address your pain points, or you can address those core things that you have to do. If you get to be a very large and complex organization, your systems might need to be more complex to deal with the complexities of just the size of what you do. And so I'm a strong believer in keeping things as simple as you possibly can. And as you grow, you can develop more systems to deal with that and standard, create standard work around more things, if you will. But I just, I think we have a tendency to complicate it too much, John. And I think we need to apply some wisdom into how much we try to tackle at any given time.
Very
I don't know
good.
if that helps, but
Simple is good. No, simple is good. And again, it's focusing on those core ones that are important. Certainly is what we encourage. And again, focus on what you do. If you have
yeah.
if your core activities relies on machining, well, then you need a system that talks about maintenance and improvement and optimizing of that machining
Mhm.
processes. So yeah, keep it
I'll tell
simple.
you though,
So
on the most complex organizations I've seen are hospitals. And there's just so many different moving pieces, so many different services you have to provide that all interact with one another. That's one thing you can't make it it's hard to make it simple in a hospital because there's so many pieces to it.
interacting.
Yeah, interacting. I spent 30 years running manufacturing plants and manufacturing companies, and I found that it was better to keep things simple in a manufacturing environment. And a lot of times that's pretty easy to do because you're making a product, or variations on a product or a couple of different products, and so you had a couple of different lines. But it was a lot easier to keep things simple in a manufacturing setting than in a hospital, for example. But yeah, so there's just some particular areas of work that it might be difficult to keep things simple enough. But at the same time, we've got to keep working on making it simple, because the harder we make it, the harder we make it for people to do the right thing. And if we make it simple, it's easier for them to do the right thing.
Simple and elegance. We talk about simple and elegance.
Yeah.
Nature's elegance and simple. So we should try and mimic it. And there's a question there for Dan, so I just want to let a few more people get in there. Dan.
Right. Dan.
Thanks, John. Hey, Ken, thanks for your time. I was just conscious of when you showed that graph earlier about companies' performance decreasing after a Shingo accolade of any description. Team, I'm with Boston Scientific, and the Cork site that I would have been part of back 8, 9 years ago now, maybe won the Shingo Prize, right? And I found after that, and had we won nothing at all, just being on the Shingo journey was reward enough, right, for what it did, I believe anyway. But after that, we opened the doors to everybody wanted to come and see, right? And that carried on, probably still going on, right? And I felt that was the Achilles heel for, and again, I'm going back a long time now, but I felt that we didn't go out then and look anywhere else for years. We never went and benchmarked anywhere because everyone wanted to come and see us. And I feel a little bit of maybe perhaps we rested on our laurels or took the eye off the ball. I'm just wondering, do you agree with that, or was there any thoughts on that when you did that research?
We've studied what helps those organizations keep going and getting better and better. And I'm sure we've talked to some people at your organization as well in Cork. But at the same time, what it's interesting that it's kind of the opposite of what we found. The most common thing that people report that motivates them to keep getting better and better isn't just the improvement itself, which is part of it, but it is, how do you keep up the excitement of the people, so that they are committed to being engaged. And when we dive into that question, the most common reason they say is, well, because people come and visit us. And we know if they're going to come visit us, we got to get this thing done that we're working on right now before they get here. And then the next group comes and we got to get this one done before they come and get here. And they'll say things like, if we utilize their visits, or if we utilize the fact that there's a group coming to do a workshop at our facility, we want to show them the latest thing we've done, we've got to get it done. And that tends to be a really big motivator. And so I love the fact that when people come, you open your doors. The organizations we've seen that have not been able to sustain improvement are the ones that have closed their doors after they've received a Shingo Prize, and they close their doors. And They may have even had the idea of KBIs and behaviors. They may have good systems, but they've lost their motivation. And you've got to have that motivation keeping you going so that you can keep getting better and better. And you've got something new to show the group that's coming next. I hope that helps
Ken.
a little bit, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Ken.
I'm gonna jump in there actually, because I do see, I mean, I'm obviously a massive fan of visits. For 20 years I've run a visit program. So obviously I really do think they're great things. However, I do see the pressure put on the recent award-winning sites. And I wonder, and I think going on to that point, Dan, is that you almost become you're going through the motions of delivering those visits rather than actually treating them like the learning experience, two-way learning experiences they should be. So you turn into industrial tourism, which really we need to avoid whenever we do visits. You need to make sure they're two-way activities. But anyway, that's my thoughts. Sorry.
Yeah.
Greg has his hand up there.
Greg, go on, John.
Yeah, thank you. So I wondered, with respect to Dan's comment, in excellence, how much have you found that a learning-centric culture or a place where learning is emphasized as part of your work facilitates the continuation of excellence at a sufficient level? Every place I've worked that's learning-centric, we've performed pretty well.
Absolutely essential. And we rarely see a Shingo Prize recipient organization, and especially don't see ones that continue to improve unless they have a robust training system. And training is not just training in terms of cross-training to perform certain jobs. It is more, how do we keep learning more about, what does quality mean to our customers? And learning more about technology and the application of technology. We see, and I'm going to use technology as an example because I'm sure it's something that's top of mind for many of you. And we see the best organizations using technology better than their competitors, which is one of the reasons why they're better than their competitors. Is the way they use technology. They do it in a way that respects people. They do it in a way that helps people be more productive. They do it in a way that helps control quality better. And when you have purposeful driven application of technology, then you get better results in the long run. And I'll put this in terms of numbers. We typically find Shingo Prize recipient organizations spend half as much on capital expenditures as their competitors, and they have on average twice the productivity out of the investments they make. So we would characterize it as a 4x, half as much and twice as, 2 times better. And the reason why they're able to use technology is because they train their people to be in the technology that's relevant to their particular jobs. And as a result, the people learn how to apply the technology better and faster and cheaper than their competitors do. And it's largely because their people are trained well on how to use it. Does that make sense? That's just an example of it, though, Greg. And so that if you respect people, you help them reach their potential. When you help them reach their potential, they're going to give back, and they give back in ways that permeate throughout the whole organization. Technology just being an example of it.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. That helped. Appreciate it.
Rob, you have your hand up there.
Hey everybody, how are you? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Ken. Thanks for their comments as well. Just here at the Dublin site in Ibsen, and it's wonderful to hear a lot of the conversations around after the likes of being on a journey towards the challenge. And only in the last week or two, I read an article, I think it was by a person called Liker, who had mentioned
Jeff Liker.
Yeah, he did something in 2017, and I read it, and it was, I think the title of the article is "Why Lean Programs Fail," and he kind of supported your comments, Ken, around like a large majority of companies and how they can let it drop, the momentum drop, and then revisiting using the Shingo examiners to go back and review sites that have previously won, that it is more common for it to drop than it is for it to either sustain or keep going. And being in the Dublin site, that's scary. That's scary to hear. So that's why I wanted to join the call today. One thing I wanted to ask, now it's not something I'm considering, but it's just, I'd love to know, everybody on the call and yourself, your thoughts on the idea of playing around with a company's set of principles. So have you seen sites who have dropped off, let's say, the momentum for continuous improvement, and have entertained the idea of reforming their belief system, their culture, their behaviors, and their set of principles that they believe in? Do they go that drastic to get it back to where they want to be? Or what is your take on changing something that seems to be the foundation of a company's belief system?
Well, all companies have their own history, okay? And they might have their own way of talking about things or their own way of doing things that has helped them get successful in the first place. And what we see more often, and so I want to thank you for allowing us to go visit you a couple months ago. I really enjoyed the visit to your facility in Dublin. So thanks for letting me come and bring a group of people to do that. So you're still opening your doors. At least you opened them to us, and I appreciate that.
No
but
problem.
with that said, now what you'll find though is it's not uncommon for organizations to put their own language to the principles, okay? And you don't have to phrase it the same way we phrase it necessarily. It is totally acceptable from our point of view to own it and make it fit within your own existing culture, your own existing language that you have that's unique to your organization, and make it your own. Some people just use the model as is, but we find that there's a lot of organizations who have adapted it before they've adopted it, or as part of the adoption process, they've adapted it to the way they do things, the way that already, language that will resonate with their people, and that's okay if they keep doing that too. We don't say you have to use the principles and you have to phrase them this way. What the consequences, the good and bad consequences of following the principles or not following the principles, comes from how you actually implement it. It isn't how you phrase it or how the words you choose to use. Just do it. You've got to figure out how to do it. And so a lot of organizations map it out and say, this is how we talk about this principle, and this is how we talk about this principle. And if you can explain that to us, then and you can explain it to your people as they go through, for example, the Shingo workshops, then that's great. That'll work. It works wonderfully well because it resonates with people and the way they want to talk about it or the way they already talk about it in their own organization. That's true for the future too. If you find that you can adapt it in a certain way that resonates with your people better, feel free to change the wording. Don't be stagnant, and but don't lose sight of the principles, because I can tell you, if you stop following some of the principles, and I'll give an example. There's one organization that we looked at that adopted 9 of the principles, and they intentionally went out and said, well, we just can't do that. And I'm going, okay, which principle? You look down the list they put up there, and they had their own way of wording the 9, but there's only 9, and they left out improve, flow, and pull, and we said we just can't do that. Well, if you're never going to do flow and pull, you're never going to be able to do this. You're never going to be able to tackle a lot of your quality at the source problems, because you can't see quality problems soon enough to understand what the source is. And so we had this little debate with him about, can you ignore one of the principles and still be able to drive excellence? Well, yeah, you can drive a little bit of excellence, but you're going to be limited. The consequence is you're going to be limited in how much you can do until you follow all of the principles. And so follow it, but you don't have to call it what we call it. That's my little bit of advice on that one.
Thanks, Ken. Really informative. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we've Tim next, and then we have a Noon AKX2. So Tim, and then Noon AKX2.
You can guess that one in the
Yeah,
meantime.
I think I know
Oh,
what
yeah.
the Noon
Yeah, I was thinking.
AKX2 is.
Yeah. The alias isn't working, Kieran.
A troublemaker.
Go on,
Hey
Tim.
Ken,
Tim,
this
you're
is
up there.
this is Tim. I'm from North Carolina, so thanks for getting up early. Was you got up even earlier than I did?
Yeah, it's 6
uh,
a.m. here in Utah. So
Yeah, I used to work at Hewlett Packard in Colorado, where we started doing lean pull system, pull and flow back in the mid to late 80s, and introduced a bunch of technology around it using HP workstations, Unix-based kinds of stuff that has become legacy. And technology has, I've seen instances where technology is really helpful, but the organization there is so stuck in old systems that are inflexible, that their technology is also the anchor that is kind of, I think, holding them back. And I wondered if you could dig a little deeper and say more about when you see technology really helping people. What are we talking about?
well, when we're talking about technology, I'm talking about the things that we apply internally, and how that impacts any organization. And so currently, well, I'll go back to I lived through Industry 3.0, and I want to thank you, Tim, because the facilities of Hewlett Packard that you worked at were some of my largest customers when I was running an electronics company back in the late 80s. So I have been to Loveland and Colorado Springs facilities a
Sure.
lot.
Yeah.
And you are a great customer for Hewlett Packard was a great customer to work with. So thank you for that. And I'll just put that little 2 bits in. So because we apparently share that past. But at any rate, I lived through the automation of factories. You know, the whole idea of introducing robots and machines that moved through automation. That was the era when I was running a plant or running manufacturing companies. And I see the same sort of mistakes that I made in applying, thinking things like, I'm going to give you some, I told you trial and error. Here are some of the errors that I made. Well, we can't seem to solve this problem when we do this manually. I bet if we automate it, we can solve the problem. And some of you,
Yep.
I think, are probably smiling right now because you probably
Yes.
made the same error. And
Absolutely.
what I learned the hard way was, no, you've got to be able to figure out how to do it right before you automate it. Otherwise, you just make a lot more bad product a lot more efficiently. And this gets into the whole, is efficiency what we want? No, and I'm not making an American political comment here, although I think it's appropriate. Efficiency is not Kaizen. Effectiveness is what you want. You want organizational effectiveness. You want it doesn't help to be more efficient at doing the wrong thing. It doesn't help to be more efficient at making bad products, and so on. Efficiency is not what you want. You're putting the ladder on the wrong wall when you're focused on efficiency. And that's a lesson that we learned the hard way during Industry 3.0. And I see as we now, go to what people are often calling Industry 4.0, where we're looking at things like AI and big data and whatever other new tech, 3D printing and things like that. There's so many new technologies coming out, but it doesn't change the way we interact with technology. If we use technology wisely and we use it purposefully, we can still make improvements to how the organization does their work and delivers the value to their customers. And that concept does not change. But the key part of it is, how do you engage the people in using the technology? And I'm going to maybe bore some people with a little bit of history of Toyota. The word for automation in Japanese is jidoka. And the middle character of jidoka means movement. There's three. It's made of three characters. So there's 1, 2, 3. Jidoka. Toyota uses the term jidoka, and I think many of you have heard them because it's one of their pillars. But they changed the middle character from the typical word in Japanese, which means automation. They created a new word, basically. And the new word, what they changed in that character is not just movement, but for the movement, or if the work itself, they added what's called a ninben, which is a person. And it instead of it just being movement, it changes the meaning of that middle character to work, the work being done. And the work being done implies a person is involved. What they're saying is, and they now translate their term for jidoka, instead of saying automation, it's automation with a human touch. And that's, if you go visit a Toyota factory, that's what they'll say, automation with a human touch. But as a practical application, that just means people need to be able to figure out how to use the technology, or the automation in this case, in a way that's effective and makes the organization better in some way, whether it be as a, so let me just use an example of AI and big data and the cameras that we have available today. I have seen a number of organizations who are using cameras to do 100% inspections that the human eye couldn't do before. And as a result, they are able to, run it right in line with their processes and make sure that they don't ever have a bad product, or if it does, it can shut down the line right then and there, and can do it at a way that humans aren't able to do it. You can also start tracking data on measurements with a camera, that you can then see trends to see, is it starting to drift out of spec? And if it's starting to drift out of spec, how do we do the PM that keeps it in spec with, and what's the cadence we need to be doing our preventive maintenance to make sure it doesn't drift out of spec? And you can use things like big data and cameras and AI to do all that. And I see people doing that today. And to me, that's a magical application of new technologies. It's something that we can't do as human beings, at least at that speed and with just using the human eye. But we can do it using technology. And if we make those kinds of improvements to our production line, and I'm just using this, but I'm using a manufacturing example, but it certainly is not restricted to manufacturing alone. And I'll give you a good healthcare example in a second. But you can make it better so the operators can be monitoring how the technology is working and fixing the problems the technology can reveal, and focusing on those things instead of focusing on just the inspection and doing some cadence of preventive maintenance without really understanding all of the data what you can learn from all the data. Sure. I'll give a healthcare example. Saw a wonderful example of AI in healthcare last year at a conference, Lean in Healthcare conference. Most general practitioners, at least this is a U.S. example. I'm not quite sure how well it applies in Ireland or England or other places around the world that we may have represented on this. But a typical general practitioner sees somebody, for their annual checkup, and a typical patient visit takes about 10 minutes unless there's some complications. And then the physician spends 15 minutes on average filling out the insurance forms for the insurance companies and the medical record forms that they need to keep track of what's happening with the patient. Okay, so now they've developed an AI listening device that is programmed to fill out the paperwork. So the physician now, with using this AI assist tool, the physician still spends the 10 minutes with the patient, and then is able to, the AI fills out the forms. The physician now on average spends about 5 minutes reviewing the insurance form and the medical record form, and they're done with the patient in 15 minutes instead of 25 minutes. Now, to me, that is a wonderful application of technology. It reduces stress on the doctor. It allows the doctor to see more patients. And I don't know what it's like at other places in the world, but we have a shortage of general practitioner doctors right now. If we can make that kind of productivity improvement and make it easier for them to see patients and spend less time doing bureaucratic paperwork, then we are improving healthcare. And so to me, applying technology can be a wonderful thing, and we can't be afraid of it. We've got to figure out how to embrace it and use it wisely, use it in ways that help make us provide better quality, better productivity, and add value to it.
As you were speaking, it occurred to me that I think what you're saying is that the technology needs to be re-examined to make sure it's aligned with our principles.
Yes,
So
always.
and we take great efforts to make sure that they don't become that disincentive where people say, yeah, we've got these things, but we can't really do it that way. Going back to an earlier statement you made.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. Thanks.
I'm gonna let Kieran get in there. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, I think
Good
it's up to Kieran
provocation.
Noonan next. The Nuna KX2 is actually Kieran Noonan. If those of
And
you
here
who
he
may
is in
know him.
person. He's actually a replicant, but there you go. This
I
is
can't really tell my boss to shut up, can I? Really, it's not the done thing, is it? So, just going back in terms of the process that companies see the momentum start to drop off after the challenge, and I've experienced it through multiple organizations going through that journey. I think you're right, but the companies, as Ken's outlined, a lot of the elements that ensure that the companies that do well continue to do well going forward. I think one of the pieces that really ensures that happens is, and it goes back to what Tim just said, it always aligns back to your principles, and your principles have to be the overarching driver of why you're on this journey. We've been doing some work with a facility recently, and if you ask the head of that facility, how much have we spoke about the prize in the last 2 years? 5 minutes, about 2 years ago. And that's it. And we've really spoken about where do we want to drive the organization to? Can we paint a picture of what the organization is going to look like in 10 years' time? And when you think about that, it's what does that mean for the organization? Where does it sit in terms of the value chain within its organization? What does that mean it has to look like? What does the factory of the future need to look like? And then you get into the world of what do the people of the future need to look like? And now you start to build all of those elements in there. And we've really aligned on those ones. And the other companies I've been with, the Shingo Prize is an appropriate timestamp on the front door to confirm that you're going in the right direction, but how you're getting there is also correct as well. It's a confirmation. And my belief is, when any of the companies I've been in, if Sean had sent a team of examiners to a facility and they walked in the door in reception and said, do you know the agenda that we set out for the 3 days? Yeah, we're going to rip it up. We're going to go rogue. We're going to go anywhere. And it should really be kind of, well, okay with that one. Do what you want. I'm okay. Because it isn't about the prize. It really, I know we all say that we've been in organizations, but it is about what does the star in the top box look like in 10 years' time? And that's really what the overarching piece is. And the companies that also do very well are the ones that have said, it's not about just engaging the site head. It's about engaging the organizational leaderships above that. Because, in Ireland, we know that Shingo's been part of our journey for 20 years or whatever. And those heads in those organizations in multinationals have changed or are changing. And what we've got to do in our organizations is make sure that we're passing that baton of that person that was engaging and inspiring everyone in the journeys. We have to develop the next level down to take the baton and have the understanding that they may never have had before because they were never part of that journey. Because that journey that goes there by default has the perspective of people have learned along the way. And if you come in halfway, then you've lost the learning of the first part. And what we've got to do is make sure that the new leadership teams in the top level organizations are handed the baton and we help them understand that piece. And I think that's part of what will help the future of organizations to continue the journey.
And that's part of why you have to have a robust training program too, is the people who are coming up through the organization get that training. So
and when you do the benchmarking, what are they coming to see? They're coming to see your behaviors, they're coming to see your tools, they come to see your systems. And having experienced that demand to come in and being part of that demand to come into organizations where people go and observe, you've got to build and be rigorous and say, well, we're rigorous about everything else in our facility. That's why why we are where we are and why we're recognized for that. You have to be as rigorous in terms of the learning experience from external benchmarking for yourselves and the internal benchmarking that comes in, because you're still got to say, if this impacts my business and my team, then I'm not being respectful to them. You've got to be rigorous and have a structure and a system that manages that.
Very good. It's key. Like again, that sustainability piece is always coming up. So we're just on time. So thanks for that, Kieran. One of the definitely this idea of the Shingo is part of your journey. You have to have that future vision piece. And that's a very important exercise we do in our leadership. Where do you want to be in draw me the picture? What's it feel like? Play me the video, walk me around, what's it look like? So that has to be clear. And then the Shingo, as Kieran said, Shingo stamp, if you choose to use that as a model, is an affirmation that you're on the right journey. But it has to be linked to that future legacy that that leadership team want to leave behind. And the last quick point I wanted to drop in then is leaders often leave. The tenure of a leader in an organization might be 4 years, 5 years, but people tend to stay. So for what I see in this Shingo model is we're seeding the culture to that team. We're giving power to the team to define the culture and the behaviors that they need to succeed in their organization. And they will be there a lot longer than most of the leaders in it. So if we do that really, really well, they own the culture and they're ensuring that it maintains and creating standards for themselves. And that I think is something to bear in mind. So with I think 2 minutes to go. I there's some questions in the chat. Greg, I think you had a good one there about, and I think that's been answered in some of the dialogue you heard here. Please stay tuned to these sessions. I'd really like to thank Ken for joining us today again. And telling everybody how fantastic SA partners are. That's always a plus. We'll have the check over to you soon. Ailsa, thanks for organizing these events, which are always very useful and great. But we're again happy to keep any dialogue or questions going if anyone wants to follow up.
Well, thanks, John, and Jim, for having me and letting me just share a little bit about the Shingo model and the history of the Shingo Prize and so on. Always an honor. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Ken.
Thanks,
I'll leave
Ken.
it to you to wind up.
Yeah, thank you, Ken, and thank you everybody that contributed and all of you for joining us today. John, great to see you. Thank you for joining. Know you're on site, so you need to get back to work. Off you go. I'm joking. Jim, thanks again. Look forward to seeing you all next month. I have put the next dates in the chat, and I did ask Ken to share a slide on the Shingo conference. I do want to flag that that's coming up very soon.
And I forgot to do that, didn't I?
You did indeed.
Oh,
You
dang.
shall. And I'm going to let you share the dates now. I will send it around in a follow-up email, more information about the Shingo conference. And it's going to be a fantastic event. You've got some great speakers lined up. So we look forward to seeing you at the next forum. And I hope you have enjoy the rest of your day. Indeed, Ken, you've got a long day ahead of you now.
Dan just put it in the chat. So April 28th.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
So thank you, Dan.
April 28th. So
See you there, Ken.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Enjoy it all. I will see you very soon. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Kieran. Bye-bye.
Bye.